So no matter how much we dress something up, make it look beautiful, or dress to disguise something, its character is going to show through. Whatever is there will show through. So I look at space clearing sometimes as being like, if we didn't get washed and we put on a beautiful dress for a special occasion, it's like no matter how beautiful something can look on the outside, there's still the dirt showing from underneath. So my name's Sue Holmes, and I've been a healer for nearly 25 years and a Feng Shui and space clearing consultant full-time, and a shamanic practitioner for 13 years. And I'm teaching a space clearing training course now. And I'm here to talk about the synergy of combining Feng Shui and space clearing. So when we think about why do we do Feng Shui, what is Feng Shui really all about? These are the kind of words that people will quote. And I would say that these can be very much achieved using Feng Shui and space clearing to support them. So when I look at a holistic way of working with how to transform the energy of a house and our quality of life, so we can bring in classical Feng Shui and Western Feng Shui, astrology, geomancy, space clearing, clutter clearing, electromagnetic fields. And then the bottom section, I think tends to vary depending on the consultant. So we each bring a different kind of quality, a different emphasis to the work, depending on who we are. And I think that's going to influence also the consultant that people will choose to come and work with them. But these are all aspects. The top ones are ones that I work with, and I think some of those overlap, and some of those people have different opinions about how much they overlap and how much they're seen as separate. For me, they very much overlap. And usually we start by looking at the human chi. What is it that people are really looking for in their home and in their life? And very often it will be the most common and popular ones: health, wealth, happiness, family, love, career, creativity. So if we look at a house that looks fantastically impressive and beautiful, perhaps on the outside, especially if it's for sale, and a Feng Shui consultant has been in and looked at how to arrange everything beautifully. But I'd like to look at another layer which space clearing addresses, of what's happening behind the scenes. So behind the smile, there may be other stories, as there are in everybody's life. So when we're looking at the history of a house, a lot of what we're coming into contact with is invisible. However, it is also tangible and perceptible. And that's something that the more you work with your clairvoyance, your clairsentience, your ability to feel, see and hear energy, the more you're going to pick up on those kind of things. So when we're space clearing, we're really tapping into the Akashic records, the records of everything that has ever happened, everything that's ever been thought, every intention, every actions, every word in the Akashic records, which becomes imprinted into a space. Now, often people will say to me, "Oh, I've got a happy house. Everybody says they like it here. It's got a good feeling." And yet every single home I go to, if I'm invited to sense the energies, I will pick up on all kinds of energies that wouldn't fit with the description of a happy house. And that's because we're a mixture of everything, like with most people. We're a mixture of all kinds of things. And also because probably people who come around are being polite. Not many people would actually say, "Oh no, I don't think it feels so good here." And also people just become used to that. They become desensitized. You know, if you were really sensitive to energy, you probably wouldn't be able to just walk out the door and go down through the tube and carry on, because there's so many different frequencies of energy we can come into contact with. But we become used to desensitizing ourselves to energy so that we can just function on a moment-to-moment basis. Another thing people will say sometimes is, oh, I've smudged it. You know, without meaning to sound patronizing, there's a big difference between really finding out what energies are in a space and really acknowledging and having you know, meeting those energies and with a great deal of presence and compassion and skill with the tools that we can use, rather than, you know, perhaps just wafting some smoke around. You know, there's smudging and there's smudging. So generally with space clearing, we're going to have an intention to acknowledge and clear the past and then imprint the space with our wishes or the wishes of our clients. And I would say that as practitioners, as meditators, as seekers, that it's really important to cleanse the spaces in which we live and work, so that they are transforming at the same rate that we are. Otherwise, we're being held back into the past by all of the old energy that's hanging around us. And that's not just our energy, but the energy of all the people that have lived there in the past. So we can go, you know, I went to a very modern looking house, which on the surface looked very simple. And yet, when I closed my eyes and I journeyed to find out what had happened in the past there, immediately I was shown these kinds of images. And the reason they called me was because their little boy was afraid to sleep in his bedroom and he wouldn't go in the garden. And children and pets are often the first to alert people to what's happening in the energy of their homes, and also what's happened after the space clearing has happened. So in this case, after doing, you know, whatever clearing I could do within the time that I was there, also dowsed to find and journeyed to find a solution, a practical solution for them. And we found a place in the garden where they could create an altar to peace. And then the little boy took part in whenever they'd go out for a walk, he'd bring back another stone to put on the altar for peace. And so it was really a sweet way for him to become an integral part of the healing. And after that, he felt comfortable in his own home. The kitchen can look like this when we go in to have a look at a house, to buy the house, or just on the surface. But then, if we go into the history, it might tell a different story. Every house has probably had its share of arguments. Bedrooms. If we move into a house, or even if we're staying, if we travel a lot with our work, every bedroom is the most intimate, most personal space. And it's going to hold all of our most personal thoughts and fears, times of stress or worry or sadness, ill health and difficulties, separations, divorces, other people's sex lives. So I'd say it's a good idea to make sure our bedrooms, our most intimate spaces in our lives, are not clouded with all this other energy from the previous people and, you know, or previous relationships. In offices as well, I've been to an office that looked like this on the surface. Looked very beautiful, lots of light. And, you know, with Feng Shui, we were bringing out the very best potential of this to be a very dynamic and modern office. But in the history of the place, it used to be a factory. In the olden days, when there wasn't, you know, health and safety was out the window, there were a lot of exploitation. Also living through the damage and the fear and the shock of the war, as did this building. And it had even been a slaughterhouse. So, just imagining all of that fear and that trauma that would have gone into that, would have been experienced in that place. And so, for me, it's definitely worth taking these things into consideration. I was invited to space clear a building in Bristol, and it was a yoga center and a center for meditation. And so imagine people are coming in there and they're really wanting to be in a place that's conducive to health and to awakening consciousness. And yet when I journeyed, I saw slaves coming out of the walls. And the owner said that she couldn't understand what it was, but there was a very heavy feeling in the building. She felt very uncomfortable in there. And what I learned through my journeying was that the building was built through slave money. So from the days of the slave trade, all the money that was made profited from the slave industries, like sugar and tobacco. Those buildings, all that wealth was a toxic kind of wealth. And all those buildings will be, I would say, polluted by that kind of energy. So it's very important to look at not only just the building and the history of who's lived there, but the karma behind the actual building, the structure of the building, and who built the place. So, in every home there's going to be usually a certain amount of love, happiness, good times, and also a certain amount of heartbreak. So these are the kinds of what I would call predecessor Shachi that I come across all the time with the space clearing work. So some of them, really every house is generally going to have a certain amount of stress, a certain amount of relationship dynamics and toxic emotions. We're all human. Addictions, everybody seems to have some sort of addictive behaviors. Perhaps everybody is too strong, but a lot of people filling that gap inside from not living in a completely harmonious way, some kind of health issues. And then in other situations, of course, there can be deaths through accidents and suicides. And this is, very strong energy that it's very important if somebody's, living in a home to make sure that this has been addressed and healed. And suffering spirits, that's a whole other topic in itself. Other invisible concerns. So as Richard was talking about earlier, there's geopathic stress, both natural and man-made, and then the EMFs and microwaves. So I think it's also important to pay attention to these. So the house is not just an isolated house. It's sitting on the earth. It's affected by this incredible planet that we live on, and all of the underground water and the cavities in the rocks, and I believe that they're all having an effect on the building itself. And then same picture as Richard had, demonstrating the dowser and the geopathic stress lines, and where lightning strikes on the crossing points of the lines. So this is something that I also like to pay attention to and work with it in a healing context. As you can also use avoidance, but then I like to incorporate an earth healing into my space clearing work. Electromagnetic fields, this is something that I think it's good, in my opinion, good to use avoidance, and then also to use different methods that we can reduce it. So rather than just sticking a bandage over the wounds, what can we do about them? So we don't have to go crazy. We can essentially work with compassion. So that's really one of the golden rules. Whatever I find is to stay in a home, is to stay in that place of compassion. And to create a beautiful ceremony. And again, it has to be appropriate to whatever we feel comfortable with, whatever the client feels comfortable with. So a space clearing ceremony, most people talk about it having 4 sections to it. So is the preparation stage, cleaning the place, clutter clearing, and detection, finding out what needs to be cleared away. Then the actual clearing itself. So that's where really meeting that energy and clearing it using intention, very often using sound healing tools. And there's the most incredible tools that you can get these days. And using the elements, earth, fire, air, water. And then an invocation to fill the space. So once it's cleared away, that beautiful clarity, tangible clarity which can be felt in a space that's been cleared, and then infusing that with our positive intentions and love. And some kind of sealing ritual at the end to hold all those blessings within the home. So, what about your home? Perhaps you can cast your mind, your heart back and feel into what have been your experiences since you've lived in your home. What about the previous occupiers? And what about any significant local history which might be affecting where you live? Feuding neighbors or, any kind of thing. All these things can have an influence. Are there mines in the area close to you? Have there been trees cut down? Are there arguments, between neighbors? That's often a sign that there's something going on. So let's have a closer look. How do we find out what else has been there? So when detecting the energy frequencies and vibrations that are in a home, one of the ways that I use is a shamanic journey. And the more you practice this, I find that the more it all starts to be very quickly revealed to you, partly because of the relationship you can have with your guides and with the method. Dowsing is another way that people like to use to discover what's going on with invisible energies. And meditation and using our clairs, our clairvoyance, our clairsentience, clairaudience, moving around the space, feeling, closing your eyes to see more clearly, feeling what's happened there. And, I really encourage everybody my students to find their own way. We're all different and we all have different skills. We all have different ways of perceiving, and to really work on your own strengths, find your own way. So usually in a ceremony, we'll create some kind of altar. You see an altar ahead of us there with the cross and a single candle. And for me, what's important about it, it's not about it being lavish, it's not about it being covered in gold, it's not about it being expensive. It's about making it sacred and making it special. And the altar is really, it's like a portal to the divine. It's the axis mundi. It holds that sacred space and holds the intentions of the whole ceremony. So working with air. So there's all kinds of different smoke that we can use, which is a beautiful way of cleansing space. From sage to copal, cedar, from all different traditions. People will have their personal preferences. Air touches everything. So the spirit of air is a very beautiful way to space clear. And sound is carried with air. And so here's a space clearing bell. Balinese one. And here are some other sound healing tools. So rattles and drums, gongs, and then this crystal pyramid, which is my latest space clearing toy. And I quote the name Dieter Schrader of the German guy who created this particular invention. You can get other ones, but I think it's beautiful the way his consciousness and his went into the design of it, you know, the pyramid shape and the working with the crystals in a very beautiful way. And our voices. Voices can be beautiful ways to use sound healing, because we can put a lot of intention into our voice, and also the voice can be used to achieve all different kinds of pitches if we have the confidence. Nobody can tone out of tune. So I really encourage people to use their voice, because you can use a voice to meet and to transform disharmonious energy, and you can also use the voice as the invocation to bring in a love, bring in a beautiful mantra, for example, into a home. Healing waters. So you may have access to healing waters, for example, at Glastonbury, for the waters there, or you can make your own, you can buy them, nice space clearing sprays. Always good to use water in a ceremony. And transformational fire. So at the end of the ceremonies, I think it's nice to write an intention at the beginning, and then at the end you can burn it in a beautiful ceremonial fire. And of course also when we light candles. Earth healing, so here's an example of a crystal used in earth acupuncture. So we use prayers at the beginning to state the intention. We use prayers for the invocation, and at the end, sealing with gratitude. So in this way, we can transform any of the suffering, all of the sadness in the world, and transform it into beauty, into love. So Feng Shui manipulates subtle energy in the home to enhance quality of life. Feng Shui reduces Sha-Qi and augments Sha-Qi. And I would say that these can be applied to space clearing equally. What is a Feng Shui cure? Huaji, literally transforming fears. Placing a symbolic object combined with intention and ritual action to facilitate change. So what a beautiful way to actually do the space clearing, but if you did the Feng Shui first, and you found what the cures were that you wanted to bring into the house, you could have put those into place during the ceremony. And sometimes I go to space clear a house, and I will see obvious Feng Shui things that can be changed, just from form, because it can be seen visually. So rather than just space clearing someone's house and leaving the bed in the wrong position, it's always nice to say, actually, you know, perhaps you'd like to try your bed over here, because from what I can see, it would be much better there. And as well as form, there can be symbolic imagery, looking at the paintings that people have in their house. So coming back to the human chi, which is what it's all about in the end, is serving the needs, serving the aspirations of our clients. When asked how it felt to be the smartest man alive, Albert Einstein replied, "I don't know, you'll have to ask Nikola Tesla." And Nikola Tesla said, "If you want to find the secrets of the universe, think in terms of energy, frequency, and vibration." So just to close, I'm running a space clearing training course in which I include all these aspects of what I find to be the best ways to work. And there's also other training courses in space clearing with Jackie Tyrrell and Vicky Sweetlove. You can find details on the Feng Shui Society website. That's me.